We review The Waking of Willoughby Hall and Halls of the Blood King today on Dungeon Craft.
Deathbringer here. Subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss out on any cool content.
Welcome to Dungeon Craft. I'm Professor Dungeon Master. Today we're taking a look at The Waking of Willoughby Hall by Ben Milton and Halls of the Blood King by Diogo Nogueira. Both of these adventures were nominated for 2021 Emmy Awards for Best Scenario. Both feature outstanding layout. They are textbooks on how to present a dungeon. Both feature a lot of concepts I mentioned here on Dungeon Craft, like interesting locations, memorable villains, and time limits. And they feature contrasting tones. Willoughby Hall is a lighthearted romp, and Halls of the Blood King is dark and creepy. So they demonstrate how versatile the OSR can be. Let's take a look at Willoughby Hall first. Waking of Willoughby Hall by Ben Milton of Questing Beast is 32 pages, soft bound. The cover art and interior art is by Sam Mameli. And one of the great things Ben does is he includes a map on the inside cover. Here's a 2-story map of Willoughby Hall. And instead of giving room numbers, he writes Weapons Room, Night Garden, Great Hall. And he gives you a page for easy flipping. Brilliant design. So writing and cartography and layout is by Ben Milton. Playtesting is by Kate Marshallian and a whole bunch of Miltons. And one of Ben's most innovative ideas is how he does exposition. Instead of 4 pages of backstory, he breaks it down into yesterday, this morning, and just moments ago. Yesterday, a group of NPC adventurers stole a magic goose from a cloud giant, Bonebreaker Tom. This morning, they fled the giant's castle. Bonebreaker Tom pursued them, ripped a bell tower from a church, and is using it as a flail to crush them. And just moments ago, the exhausted NPCs took refuge in a haunted manor called Willoughby Hall. This is them, with Bonebreaker Tom looking in on them. But Tom is too big to fit inside, so he batters at the walls and the roof with the bell tower. The player characters are, by coincidence, also in the manor, seeking treasure. As the giant attacks the haunted Willoughby Hall, it writhes in agony at the sound of the bell. So as the scenario continues, the manor wakes up, becoming more and more dangerous as floors collapse, rooms explode, and all manner of magical chaos breaks out. So you have the essential elements of a great adventure here: an interesting original locations, multiple villains, and a time limit. So Willoughby Hall has 3 states: sleeping, restless, and awake. And as Tom batters at the walls, the encounters get progressively more dangerous. We have the stats loaded up front. You got Bonebreaker Tom, although the characters are so low level they really can't hurt him. And the inhabitants of the manor, including a death knight, skeletal servants, an occultist, some ghosts, and my favorite, a taxidermied owl bear. We also have a group of NPCs who are chasing Mildred, the horrible magic goose. And she's escaped them, and she doesn't particularly like Tom either. So she's running around this manor house with the NPCs in pursuit. And I love the way the stats are done here. Just the essentials: helmet, half sword, level 3 neutral fighter, 3 hit dice, 18 hit points, armor 16, morale 4, and all the rest of the stuff is bulleted. His sword, his personality. We can find everything we need at just a glance, and each of these NPCs has their own personality. Helmet is kind of cowardly. He wants to get the goose, but at minimal risk to himself. Elizabeth, the thief, wants to just forget about the goose and escape with their lives. Apocalypse Anne doesn't really care about her compatriots. She just wants the goose. So they have conflicting motives. One terrific feature is the areas described on this page are highlighted right here. So you have the Great Hall and the music room. And notice how the rooms are all in columns, right? You've got 1 column for 1 room, 1 column, 1 room, with the highlighted areas in the corner. And the important descriptive details are bold-faced, like it's a 2-story room with a black marble floor, pale green floral wallpaper. The north wall is moldy. Ben does a great job of describing rooms not just with sight, but with sounds and smells. As in, the floorboards creak loudly, and there's silence and darkness with a pungent smell. Lots of random charts. The bullet points tell us exactly what we need, and the adventure is very free form, with the goose running amok to random places, the NPCs pursuing them, and Bonebreaker Tom battering out the outside. And there's a lot of replay value here, especially for the Dungeon Master. You could run this 10 different times with your friends or at conventions, and you're going to get totally different results. So it's a lot of fun. Okay, Halls of the Blood King by Diogo Nogueira. It is published by Old School Essentials, Necrotic Gnome, hardbound, 50 pages. They make great use of the inside cover. It's used for the maps. And like Willoughby Hall, when you open it up, you'll find a smaller version of the map describing just these rooms nearby, so it minimizes flipping. The art is by Justine Jones, and it is stunning. It's got like a psychedelic H.R. Giger look, and I love it. The premise is the castle of the Blood King appears during the night, and it's infested with vampires. So you could put this castle anywhere. It just shows up. And like Willoughby Hall, there are different factions warring against each other. And here's a brief description. There's a vampire hunter. There's the Princess of Blood, who is the adopted daughter of the Blood King, even though she hates him, and Lord Demetrius, who is a sullen vampire in the vein of Louis, An Interview with the Vampire. He doesn't really want to be a vampire. He kind of just wants to die. And there are other factions as well. I'll get into them later. There are some terrific hooks, rumors, unanswered mysteries. Treasure. Treasure in old school games is XP, and this tells you where it can be found. It's super convenient. And vampire traits. So in OSR games, vampires regenerate, they can charm the player characters, and their touch drains 2 levels with no saving throws. Modern games use fear checks and insanity checks to force characters to act in a certain way, but old school games make the players afraid. They include alternatives to energy drain, but I wouldn't use them. And the vampire traits and random happenings are repeated on the inside back cover for your convenience. Very cool. These random happenings are great because they're not just monster encounters. There are also some creepy atmospheric encounters that don't really put the players in danger but build the suspense. There's also a time limit. In 6 hours of game time, or 36 turns, the sun will rise and the Blood King's palace will teleport somewhere else on the planet or even another planet altogether, trapping the player characters inside. You can see this is where I did tally marks for my game. More great illustrations by Justine Jones. These are the Blood Thrall guards, and they look awesome. Here's a Shadow Hound. Justine Jones, where have you been all our lives? This is one of my favorite encounters. Lenice is a beautiful Banshee Noble. It's a great RP encounter. My players had a lot of fun with it. And it really captures the old school vibe. If she screams, the players have to save versus death or they are dead and they don't get any saving throws. But if they just talk to her and listen to her tragic story, she can give them valuable insights and a magic item. There's also a list of vampire guests. There's a sort of conclave going on, and throughout the night, more and more vampires arrive. So the module does a great job of bringing this location to life. There's a lot of moving parts here. There's also some really creepy monsters. Here's the Blood Spider Queen. They're half vampire, half spider hybrids. There's some really creepy art. And there is an alien fungus living in the basement. So those are some of the other factions. The descriptions boldface the important details. The baths are made of gold. Again, bullet points, everything you need is at your fingertips. This is a great character, Selena the Vampire Hunter. She's been trapped in the castle for decades, surviving by feeding off the blood of a captured vampire she has chained in this secret room. And this was another great encounter with the vampire pretending he was the victim and she was the monster. And she's obsessed with defeating the Blood King, but has been unable because she's not powerful enough. Another important character is the Princess of Blood, detailed here, as well as Lord Demetrius. And the princess hates the Blood King, wants to kill him, but again, she and Demetrius are not powerful enough. And the Blood King is ridiculously powerful, and the best strategy is for the player characters to recruit Selena and the Blood Princess to help them defeat the Blood King. Like many old school scenarios, players have to use their wits and not their character sheet to figure their way out of very difficult situations. In the extended version of this video, by the way, I'll give tips on running this encounter based on my playtest. But I can tell you the players had a great time. This was an outstanding adventure. Lots of fun. Like Willoughby Hall, Blood King can be run multiple times, and you can have multiple outcomes. Players could loot the place and just run. They could confront the Blood King and get the snot beaten out of them. And my favorite outcome would be for him to be defeated, only to have the Blood Princess take his place. And like the classic module Ravenloft, it can be replayed and can turn into an annual Halloween event. Both The Waking of Willoughby Hall and Halls of the Blood King are terrific. Which one you enjoy more largely depends on your taste and what tone you and your players prefer. But they're the embodiment of what makes OSR modules so great. dangerous encounters that force the players to use their brains, not a character sheet, open-ended scenarios with lots of potential outcomes driven by the players, an outstanding layout and production design that makes it easy for the game masters to use. Both are available at the links below. Also below, you'll find links to Dungeon Craft on Facebook and Patreon, where you can get my own house rules, Deathbringer, which can be used with either of these scenarios, and my own module, Frankenstein, available at Questgivers. For more Dungeon Craft reviews and tips, click on these videos here, and may all your rolls be 20s.
Deathbringer again. Are your players going to cry if their precious characters lose a level? Let me get them a juice box and put on the wiggles. But if you play D&D like a badass, get my t-shirt below.